Okay. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Aqibatun lil mustaqim. Allah fi kulli umri yasta'in. Allah fi kulli umri amjid. Innahu Rabbi yuhibbu mukhlisin. Ladhi ibadatuhu yu'minun. Min yu'minun. Wa Muhammadun huwa Sayyidina Makbubana inhu kana Rasulun Nabiyin Salawatu Rabbi Taslimatihi alayhi. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Lil ikwani wa akwati fi din wa fi Afrika wa Europa wa Amerika wa Asia wa kulli makan. Salamu ala taba'a huda lil ikwani wa akwati wa kulli makan. Innani ulti ala kitabillah wa ala sunnati rasuli bayati. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. Ahlan wa sahlan bikum. Thank you, my dear brothers and sisters who will show up perhaps in the future. And we continue our series on the Aqeedah. And as you recall, the last meeting we had, I concluded with the chapter of the Nawaqid al-Islam Ashura, the 10 nullifiers of Islam, which were very harsh. But again, we have to understand the Aqeedah. The Aqeedah Islamiyah means the Islamic faith. It gives you the whole spectrum because it has to alert you to what is faith, and then also it has to tell you what take you from the faith. And so we have built up to where we had learned the early stages of the talk about the differences between Iman, Kufr, and Shirk. Iman meaning faith, Kufr meaning disbelief, and Shirk meaning assigning partners to Allah. And then we got to the point where we wanted to know what is the utmost, the most egregious forms of disbelief, which are the Nawaqid al-Islam Ashra, which is the 10 nullifiers, which are very grievous. They're debauchery. They're against the fitra of Allah and against all of the sunnah of the prophets, alayhi salatu wasalam, jamia. So now we're going into the Iman. What is actually Iman? We'll talk about this in a couple of segments, bi'ithnillah ta'ala. And so we'll start now on developing our Aqeedah and developing the one portion of it, Iman. This is what is very much misunderstood. And today I will hope to clear up some of it so you can measure yourself on actually what is your Iman. And we have a lot of problems in the Muslim community, even in the Muslim states, because they don't study, and many are trapped up in a rat race. And you got to be honest, many are suffering in the Muslim world. They don't have food, they have money, they have no livelihood. There's a lot of injustices that's around them. And so therefore, we know in Islam, how can a person concentrate on developing his Islam when his stomach is not full? And when he's suffering from grave injustices, we understand that, we see this, we know it's happening. The Prophet ﷺ talked about the era as we start going towards now the final hour, and we can see all these injustices. And now we're at the point in the stage where we have the enemies of Islam who have bolstered the hypocrites and the other types of phony Muslims and empowered them, giving them protection and giving them space, running interference for them so they can hijack the religion, which they have done very successfully to the point now that many Muslims and non-Muslims alike don't know even what Iman actually is and what disbelief, because they have infused both. So now we're going to talk about some of this, and I'm going to help us here to understand actually what Iman is. Because if you ask many Muslims, they'll tell you it's only one facet. They'll say it's this, they'll say it's that, and so forth. We're going to kind of clear some of this up today. So let's start on this, and let's look at the fundamentals of the Aqeedah and Iman. And you notice here, normally every week I give you the proofs in the Quran. We will go to that when we get to that part of it. Now we're going to give you some of the bare essence of Iman, so you can measure this upon what you actually know and what you believe, and then ask these questions of yourself if you actually have and possess Iman. So here we go. How do we know the meaning of the Iman? We start beginning of how we know that the person possesses this. It's by the qulub, the action of the heart. The qulub lati tamlika imanan fiha. What we talk about here is the heart which possesses Iman in it. So how do we know this? And then we'll look at this part of this, and we'll say here, the violations. I'll now speak in English so we can, because we don't have Arabic speakers. The violations of misuse of the fundamentals of the Aqeedah. Now, you say, okay, the Aqeedah, which we have faith, and then we have Iman, which is also the Aqeedah is our creed, essentially, and Iman is our faith. Now, the misuse of it, you say, yeah, what are you talking about, misuse of it? How can you misuse this? Well, first of all, we have to understand how and where this Aqeedah, how it's practiced. And the first part of that is 4 areas. One is the hands. Secondly is the heart. Third is the mouth, the tongue, what comes out of it. And fourth is the mind. When a person is a believer, a deep believer, okay, devout believer, a mu'min, he possesses the perfect coordination between all 4. One doesn't speak over the other. One doesn't overrule the other. One is not strong and the other one is weak. This is how you measure this, my brothers and sisters, by the 4 conditions: the hand, the heart, what you say and what's here. And this is important because without the coordination of the 4, you run into trouble. And this is what we see today. You see Muslims on TV, you see them talking Iman and about their Islam, but then you see them doing other things outside of that. So you try to ask a question, which has been asked me many times. I don't understand. Yeah, how you can say this, but then I look on TV and I see them doing this. And I try to explain it's because they lack Iman. And someone will say, well, no, you cannot say that because I make shahadatain. Well, you have to go back into learning the deen. And this is what we're talking about, how our religion has been hijacked. Remember last week, I talked about this condition where the hypocrites and the disbelievers, the enemies of the Islam, have basically hijacked our religion to make it as though people like me are the criminals. The people like us are misguided. The people like us are fanatical. But the people who are the hypocrites, who show one face on YouTube and then he's out with women on the other, or he'll say that he's a strong believer, then he'll tell you he will not follow one of the principles of our prophet. This is what we're talking about, leaving confusion, because The brother turns on the station. He looks at me and he sees what I'm talking about. Then he goes to the other brother's station and he looks at him and he's telling something totally different. He's saying, well, look, I don't care. I'm a modern Muslim. Yeah, I got a wife at home, but she understands. I'm going to go because these some pretty ladies out here. So I'm going to go out there and hug them and dance and go with them places, even though it's in violation. Our brother who's trying to learn, he doesn't understand that. He's scratching his head. He says, well, I listened to Yahya. Yahya said we cannot do this, but I see this other brother doing it. This is what I'm talking about. Then the person who is doing this comes back and tells this person, he said, well, this guy, Sheikh Yahya, he's a fanatic. He's a terrorist. Don't follow him. You follow me. This man has a wife at home. He turns around and says, okay, yeah, brother, I'll follow you. So he goes out and does the things that he see this Muslim doing. It will lead you to the fire. This is what we're talking about here. You have to have the perfect coordination. If you are a believer that you have Iman, is not from this. I know they're on TV. They're saying that this is only coming from here. It's the action from the hands, the heart, the tongue, and the mind. Now, let's look at this. One of the conditions that you know that this person does not have Iman is by what? By him doing sins that are outside of the fitra. Okay, again, the Islamic. We're not talking about what the others are doing. We're talking about the Muslims. We're talking about the Muslims here. This is sin for any Muslim to have a wife and then he's out dating other women. It's a sin. There's no doubt about it. And in some circles, according to how many times he does it and the frequency of it, he's been deemed a mushrik because he has put the dhikr, the remembrance upon it over that of Allah. That's one of the conditions that you know. Now, let's clear this up here. You say, well, yeah, wait a minute. We're human beings. We make mistakes. Yes, we make mistakes. If you see me walking down the street, all of a sudden, a very attractive lady passes by and you look, and maybe I even look twice. That's sinful. But that doesn't mean that it takes me out from Iman. What we're talking about here is we're talking about the sinful acts, meaning continuous and sinful acts, meaning, again, fornication, me taking drinks, me going outside the house, leaving my wife inside the house. I go to fur around with other women. This is continuous action, not the one single action where the man gets weak and then he goes to talk to a beautiful, attractive girl. But before he consummates this haram with her, he stops. Okay, he's been restored. He makes his tawbah. He's been restored. But the people who constantly make the same sinful acts every day is what we're talking about here for number one. Number two is the introduction of now disbelief and shirk. When you see the Muslims introduce the disbelief and the shirk, which remember we talked about here last couple of weeks, we talked about this continuously. Again, he introduces this. Now you watch, you see Yahya. Suddenly you hear Yahya saying things. You see Yahya doing things that constitute disbelief. You see Yahya even saying things that constitutes that he's assigning partners to Subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is what we're talking about also here. This is the violations of the misuse of Iman. Because why? Because Iman, the person who has Iman, he cannot do these things. We're not talking about the single act. We're not talking about our brother who's cleaned up and suddenly he's strong and he has a lapse. He goes and he drinks because he used to be a heavy drinker and you know, he cleaned up, but then something happens to him that day. He gets weak. And so he goes to take a drink. We're not talking about that. And he knows he's made his mistake. We're not talking about a situation like this. Now, if Yahya goes back to keep drinking every day, he goes back to sip beer Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Now we're in the violation of Iman, the faith. He's starting to violate it continuously. This is what we basically talk about here. Now, also in this, the third, the acceptance, okay, the acceptance of innovation and the Bid'ah and Dalala, meaning the innovations, the introduction of things in the religion that's wrong, and the misguidance. Now, this is prevalent among us today. And this, again, we're talking about the violations of the Iman. When you see this type of situation, now this goes for, you will see this in even many so-called strong brothers who will quote unquote, I hate to use this term, Wahhabi, Salaf, who claim to be, some of you see their beards are down to the ground. They wear black clothing and they wear clothing that's way down to the ground. And they exhibit a certain behavior, and even though they are Muslims, we're not going to say they are disbelievers, because they are not. But many of them misguided. This is a problem that they have here. This is the violation of Iman, because you can never call this man a kafir, even though you see him doing things that's wrong as misguidance, or you see him introducing things into the religion that is wrong because he says, I follow a certain sheikh and this is what he says, and he follows him blindly. This is what we're talking about here, my brothers and sisters. And we have a lot of these in these the Salafi, the Tasawwuf, who's into that. We have the so-called the Wahhabi and so forth. All of them are innovating. And remember something what our Prophet, alayhi salatu wasalam, said about this and warn you and me about it. He said that there'll be 73 groups like this. Oh, you see them, they talk beautifully. Many of them are who have memorized the Quran. Many of them talk beautifully, eloquently about the Quran and the Sunnah. And they'll do, you see them in the masjid meticulously in their prayer. But yet and still, if you look closely, you'll see innovations. You say, whoa, wait a minute, I didn't know we can do this in prayer. You'll see something like this. Or you'll see some type of thing in a meeting, they're doing some type of dicker that, again, is an introduction to some other innovation that you never heard. Then you'll see out and out misguidance. This is what we're talking about. And remember what our Prophet said. He said the 73 groups will appear. 72 of them will go to the fire. Only one that follows what? The Quran and his Sunnah will go to Jannah. That's why it's important, my brothers and sisters, that you understand Iman, what it entails. You have to have the perfect coordination of the four, as I said, the hands, the heart, the tongue, and the mind. If you don't have that, if you're weak in one area, you must build that area up. Because I can't tell you in the sense of saying that I can't come to you and say, you're this, you're that. I cannot be. And I'll give you an example of that in a minute. But you have this, and there's the thing that you have this covenant with Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. And you have to have this covenant, and you have to cover all the basis of that covenant with Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. And how do you do that? Again, you have to have the perfect coordination between the four elements, the hands, the heart, the tongue, and the mind. All four have to be in unison. If one is corrupted, all three will end up being corrupted. If two of them are corrupted, all four in time will be corrupted. Your Iman is corrupted. And you have to be careful of that, my brothers and sisters, and understand that. Irrespective of what you see and hear what people say on YouTube. Don't mind that. I'm giving you this. I'm giving you the proof behind this as we go into this. Because now we're going into deeper subjects, talking about Iman and how. Because why? My community, the African-American community, suffers greatly from this, from lack of Iman. Oh, yes, they pray. Oh, yes, they make som, meaning fasting. Oh, yes, they talk good. Yes, they go to the masjid. Yes, they live a clean life. They don't smoke, they don't drink, they don't fornicate. But yet they don't have Iman. Because why? There's things missing in the elements of their faith. They have they lack the coordination of the hands with the heart, and they also the tongue. And again, you'll see a brother's very, very strong, and suddenly you'll see the deviation. Again, you'll see a brother, I'm 27 years, 28 years, 30 years, I've been a Muslim, and all of a sudden, okay, I've done this, I've done this. His hands have been covered now. Those 30 years, his hands is covered. His heart, he He talks and so forth. You think his heart is strong. Suddenly the mouth speaks. He says, I will not follow the makram rule of our prophet and the Sharia Allah Ta'ala. You see what I mean? You have thought the hands were strong, giving you one direction, going towards Jannah. The heart, you assume, is following the hands, or the hands is following the heart. But yet and still, he speaks here and he says, I will not follow something that the prophet has told and what subhanahu wa ta'ala has deemed illegal. This is what we're talking about. See the difference here. Now, as we start to go to this, now you say, well, Yahya, well, you know, how we have these four elements. We as Muslims, how do we know how to judge these brothers that we see that's around us? Well, let's look at it naturally. Two of the four, we can make judgment upon them. Obviously, by what? The hands, we can make judgment, and by the mouth. What he has in his heart and what he has in his mind, we cannot judge. Only subhanahu wa ta'ala has that power. Now, we may have some thoughts, but that's not good enough because we do not know what our brother is thinking or our sister is thinking or any other human being at a given time. We may speculate that he may be thinking about drinking. We may speculate he's thinking about going out and doing this, or he's speculating that he's thinking about the bills he has to pay, or he wants a new car. We can speculate this, but we have no way of actually knowing. So we must leave the heart and the mind alone. Abu Bakr, radiallahu anhu, he made it clear in some ways, and he tried to clear up this issue. In the beautiful hadith, he said that we cannot judge the heart, but we can judge the hands, which is what? Speaking for the heart, which is very clever and wise. That he said, the first Khalifa, radiallahu anhu, that's what he said. So in other words, he has a point, meaning you see me here talking to you now. You hear me talking, and then you assuming that my heart is clean and my hands is clean. But yet, I leave this program, and some of the brothers watch this. All of a sudden, they walk down in the city, and they see me come out of a house that everybody knows there's prostitution in it. And they see me coming out of there. They say, oh, no, it can't be. And 2 days later, they see me coming out of the same house. A house is known for prostitution. You see the women coming out, you see men going in, and you know the reputation of this. This is what we're talking about. The hands are actually speaking for the heart. What the modern Muslim will have you think today, he'll say, well, you know what, Yahya, let me tell you something. You can't judge me because you don't know what's in my heart. This is what I hear from our sisters many times. They don't want to put on a hijab. They say, well, you don't know what's in my heart. Yet, subhanahu wa ta'ala has given orders. Yet our Prophet ﷺ has given orders to our sisters to cover. We have a reason for that. And we don't ask questions when our Prophet ﷺ says this, when subhanahu wa ta'ala says this, and he gives you the proofs of the Quran, and you come back and the sisters come back and say, well, you know what? I don't want to wear the hijab. I wear it when I get old, or I wear it when I get married. You hear these type of excuses, and you cannot say nothing to me because you don't know what's in my heart. Well, your hand spoke for yourself. You said you don't want to do this. Your mouth has spoken. See, this, again, you see what I'm getting at, my brothers and sisters. You see the coordination. You see the misuse. The heart is saying one thing because she's trying to say, hey, I got deep faith. I got Iman here. But you see the hands are not in coordination with the heart, and surely not the tongue, because she says, I'm not going to put the hijab on until I'm old. When I get 60, 70, how do you know that you're going to live? Subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to let you live to get 60 or 70, then you're going to put on the hijab. But in the meantime, you're going to dress like the disbelieving women. This is what we're talking about. And this is a very serious problem among the Muslims today. Now, what is some of the conditions of Iman? Meaning, how do we know that we have this, okay, among ourselves? We're judged. Each one of us today are judging. I'm not judging anybody. We're going to judge ourselves. We have to look at ourselves in the four areas: the hands, the heart, the tongue, and the mind. We have to judge ourselves. Now, the first of this, is one of the essence of Iman is what? The belief upon there's an opposite of Iman. You must believe this, my brothers and sisters. You must believe this. What is the opposite of this? It's what? Disbelief. The opposite of Iman is faith. Okay. There you have faith. And kufr is what? The opposite of that. You must believe that those are opposites. They're not equal. They're not equal at all. But you must believe, if you have Iman, that the opposite of that is disbelief. Okay, that's one. Second is the belief that you have belief, and you have the action, and you have the speech in Iman, meaning the action of the hands. You see that. You assume that also the hands is in action, and you assume the heart is there as well. And you see the speech, okay, in Iman. That's one condition that you know. And you look at this brother, you say, okay, I see Yahya. Yeah, I see Yahya, and he's a strong brother, because now you see the coordination between his works, his heart, even though you cannot judge that, but you're assuming that his heart is good because you see his actions, and then you hear him speak. Okay, you see, this is something here. And then putting the Muslim these things into use. Again, we judge Yahya. We see him talking. We see his hands at work. We see him picking up the Quran. We see him doing things good. We see him giving zakat. We know that he gives sadaqah because he's a very generous person. We see what his hands is doing. We see now also his mouth, because in his tongue, he talks. You hear subhanahu wa ta'ala's name being mentioned continuously. You see him kindly speaking to the believers. He is kind and merciful to the believers, but he is stern against the disbelievers and the hypocrites. My brothers and sisters, hear me good on this one. Hear me good, because I see YouTube a lot. We have the modern Muslims and the hypocrites that go to back one of their own on YouTube by telling, oh, he's a good Muslim. He's moderate in his Islam. Well, let me tell you something. They need to go study Iman, because if you look at the Prophet and the orders from subhanahu wa ta'ala, he was ordered to do what? And we are ordered to follow this. We're supposed to be graceful. We're supposed to love our brothers and sisters, but we are stern against the disbelievers. This is part of Iman. You cannot get past that. That does not mean you mistreat them. I might talk about that. It doesn't mean that you go mistreat. How many times I covered this? You can't, just because the person is a Jew or Hebrew, you can't go after him. And just because he's a Jew, Hebrew, and you call him names, we're not talking about that here. But we're talking about that the distinction between Islam and that of the disbelievers and that of the believers. So that's here again what we're talking about. Okay, 3. If one of these areas that I've just covered, again, the hands is in bad shape, okay, is in bad shape. Now, that constitutes that one of these is missing. One of these areas, the mind, the tongue, the heart, the hands, there's some discoordination, disconnect between them. You have no Iman. That's right. This is the condition. You have no Iman. I don't care how many times you pray. I don't care how many times you make fasting. I don't care what you say. The coordination between the four must be in sync. If you don't have Iman. In Islam, you can't pick and choose. That's one thing that the modern Muslims want you to believe in. The disbelievers, the hypocrites and the disbelievers will tell you, look, you're still a Muslim and you can still go and date. You're still a Muslim and you can still go and fornicate. You're still a Muslim even if you go to the church and you go and pray with the disbelievers. They'll tell you this, and again, mixing disbelief with belief. Here, we're talking about, again, this type of situation. If you have one of these elements is missing, you have no Iman. And we look at this again. Remember, like I said, we give the example. The brother who you see him, his hands, you see him. some of his speech is good too. You assume his heart, and then he comes with the adage. But you know what? I must tell Yahya. Yahya. I don't like this ruling about the makram. Makram meaning the women that you can actually be associated with. I'm talking about mother, auntie, your sister, your daughters. You understand that? The non-makram, you can't. The strange woman who's not related to you out on the street, you cannot have these kind of relationships. She walks in your house, she can't uncover. Your mom can, your wife can, your daughter can, okay? Your auntie, she can, but not the woman who is not related in that close circle. She comes in the house, she can't remove her hijab in front of you, nor can you go and hold hands with her and so forth and so on. You cannot do that. Okay, so now you understand. If one of these elements is missing, you have no Iman. That doesn't mean necessarily that you are a disbeliever yet, but you are lacking in this and you're going to have to build upon it. This is why it's incumbent upon you. Remember, we talked about the 10th nullifier of Islam is learning your deen. If you do not learn it, you cannot learn this. You're going to be held responsible for that Yom Al-Qiyamah because you're going to be asked about this. Did you study your religion? This is the problem that we have as Muslims, especially the African Americans in the United States and some of our brothers and sisters in Europe and as well in Africa. We have problems in this area where we only want to do the bare minimum and that's all. And they'll say to you, look, I'm a strong Muslim. Yet when you ask them about Iman or you ask them about the Aqeedah, they can't explain anything. When you ask them, have you studied the Quran? No. Do you read the Quran? No. Have you had any training whatsoever in the Quran and the tafsir? No. What about the Sharia law? Do you know anything of it? Yes, I know that the Sharia means you can kill. And I mean, this type of misguidance we're talking about. This, again, is apostasy according to our scholars and the nullifier number 10. That's why it's serious. Here, you got to understand that these things, if these elements are missing, your Iman is gone. That doesn't mean necessarily that you have disbelieved. That doesn't mean that you've apostated, but you have a problem. You have a weakness. You have a deficiency in your Islam. This is what we mean here. And we're talking to you today for all of us to judge ourselves, not me judge you. Okay. We're not talking about that, but for all of us to see this information and we measure ourselves, how we're doing with our hands. How is our heart? How about our tongue? And how about our mind? And like I said, don't be swayed when someone comes and you hear them, even on YouTube, and these modern Muslims come and say, well, you know, I like this. He is so kind. He's not confrontational. Hey, I pull the Quran and I say, okay, dear sister, you say this, that's fine. But you call me a fanatic or you say that I'm a terrorist. And yet and still, what Subhanahu wa ta'ala tells you in this surah, he said to the prophet that that the Muslims are doing what? They are kind and considerate and have mercy towards believers, and they're stern against the hypocrites and disbelievers. Now, you say this fanaticism, that Muslim who says this, and the sister I heard say this the other day on YouTube and wrote this too on YouTube, she is in trouble because she's just contradicted and called Subhanahu wa ta'ala a liar. If she knows that and she says this, she's out. And I would take her to task for that because what she said, this is misguidance I'm talking about, my brothers and sisters. You have to be very careful of that. She wrote in the column about this one brother and about him being the special because he's modern and he's kind and he's not confrontational. Wait a minute. Subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us we're supposed to be mercy to one another, but we're supposed to be stern because why? Many of the disbelievers will take you from your Aqeedah. So what is she talking about? I don't follow that. I follow what Subhanahu wa ta'ala said. I follow what our prophet has said. Remember, I said this many times. I always use the term, Innani akulu ma yaqul, meaning I say what the Quran says and Subhanahu wa ta'ala says. I say what our prophet say. Be careful of that, my brothers and sisters. Be very, very careful of that. Now let's look at the fifth here. The Muslim who have the Imaniya Islamiyya, okay, in Arabic, you have the Islamic faith. You have the Islamic faith when what? The hands are in coordination with the heart, as I said. The heart is in coordination with the tongue. The tongue is in coordination with the mind. This person has Iman. He has Iman. Not by only talking it, by all four of the conditions, they are being met. Again, the four conditions of Iman must be met. There are no shortcuts to it. There's no modern to it. There's no nothing to it. It's four, period. You must have the coordination of that. Our scholars have spoken. Our most bravest scholars have spoken. We have the proofs from the Quran. Again, you must read about Iman and understand Iman. It's more than just talking. And I'm giving you this today for you to do your research. Now, let's look at the bare essence again of Iman. What is that? The bare essence is that the true belief of Iman is what? The Shahadatain. The true belief, the Shahadatain. Okay? Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. This is the bare essence of Iman. If this is not uttered here, you don't utter it. You cannot have Iman. That's one. Okay. Now, 7. The person, the movement, he must what? I want to say things in Arabic. Excuse me, forgive me. The Muslim who believes in the Sunnah of Allah, and he believes, he has the complete belief in his Sharia, and that he gives, that he believes that Subhanahu wa Ta'ala gives from his rahmah, meaning his mercy. This is a believer. This is a person who has Iman. Again, he's a person who believes in the Sunnah of Allah. He believes also in the complete belief. I mean, the true belief that of his Sharia, his law, and that he gives from his mercy. I'm giving you these essence to see so we can measure ourselves. Do you believe this, my brothers and sisters? Do you believe this? Do you actually believe in the Sunnah of Allah? Do you actually believe in his Sharia? You have to ask that question. Do you believe that he's the sole provider, or do you believe it's coming from somebody else? Or do you believe it's coming from your own hands? These are some of the things that we have to ask questions about. And here we're giving you the directions of this. Now, number 8, the complete reliance on Allah. This is easier said than done. We must admit this. We're human beings. We always possess doubt. We're human. We're gonna make mistakes. And remember something. Our prophet has said that nobody can have Iman that's up here every single day. Okay, 365 days per year. You cannot. You're a human being. You just cannot. It's too much going around, too much around you. You're going to go up and down. Not meaning that you're going to go from Iman to disbelief. No, you have days where you have doubt. You have days where you cry and days you're upset. There'll be days that you'll make mistake. You'll say something wrong. There's days that your eyes may tell you something, and then, you look at something, these type of things like that. No human being can walk perfectly on this earth. You just cannot. We're human beings. It can't happen. But we must have the reliance, and we must establish that, and we must push this in our heart, in our actions, that we rely on Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. Number 9, we have complete belief in the Kitab of Allah Ta'ala, the Quran, and his books, and that the revelation is sacred. Meaning the revelation that was sent down from Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, you must believe that this is a special revelation. You must admit this and must believe this. And that it was sent down to our prophet, alayhi salatu wasalam. If you believe this, this is one of the conditions again of Iman. If you say, I know Subhanahu wa Ta'ala put the prophets, but I don't know how much he actually gave to Prophet Muhammad. I'm not sure. I have doubt because I heard one man say something on television about this. If you have doubt like this, you have no Iman. As a matter of fact, you just about stepped out of the fold of Islam. So you must have this possession. You must have this in your heart. You must know this and you must believe this, that the revelation from Subhanahu wa Ta'ala is muqaddas, meaning is sacred. It's a special thing that's given from Subhanahu wa Ta'ala to his prophets. You must believe that. And you must believe that our prophet, alayhi salatu wasalam, received it. And you must believe that he transmitted this and it's in the words of Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. And then he trained us in it. We must believe in these type of things. If you don't, again, measure yourself. If you have doubt that Subhanahu wa Ta'ala gave this to Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, you got a problem with your Iman. My brother and sister, you have a problem with that. Now, 10. As I said before, you must have complete belief in the Sunnah and the Sharia of our Lord, also of our Prophet. You must have that. There's no conditions where you can accept one or the other. Remember, I've harped on this every week. We go back to this issue again, where some of us want to put conditions. You want to follow something that you like in the Sunnah and the Sharia of Allah, and then you want to turn back around and you look at the Prophet, you say, well, he's too harsh here. So, and you're going to go back to the Quran and you'll get something of a verse that you don't understand. And you say, look, you know what? I think I can go date. Even though the Prophet said we are not to do this, but I look at this and look like Subhanahu wa Ta'ala saying there's some conditions for us to date. This is what I'm talking about here. You must have complete belief. This is where most Muslims today are faulty, and why most of them are one step out of the fold of Islam, because they don't believe in the Sunnah of Allah or the Sunnah of the Prophet. They say they do, but they don't. Because and again, how you measure this is by what? Seeing how they act and perform. If you see this person, you see, yeah, he's here. Suddenly I remove my beard. I remove my imam. I remove the tobe and the clothing, Islamic clothing. And then I begin to act and to imitate the disbelievers. Now you know there's some hypocrisy here. Now let's clean this up again. We're not talking about our brothers and sisters in the West. We understand. I lived in the United States. We're not talking about that. As again, you can't walk down the street in LA looking like me. You cannot. You cannot enter your job looking like me. You cannot. We're not talking about that. We're not talking about this type of thing, but you're in a situation you are forced to do that. Again, your niyyah and your heart must be correct. Even though your job tell you cannot have a beard, you must comply because you have to feed your family at this time. If it conflicts with the Sharia, which it does, but if you can't make it to the Muslim states, you have to survive, because you cannot survive in America without working, as I said many times. So if you have a job and you're putting food on the table, you're bringing your family to the right way. Yes, you're inside your house. Your family's praying. Your children are Islamic. They love and you bring them to the Quran. You guys go to the masjid together, but you got a job that tells you cannot wear a kufi. A job tells you cannot sport a beard. You must comply at this time, because we know what's in your heart, meaning Subhanahu wa Ta'ala knows. We only assume it's in your heart because we know by the actions, and we see you, we assume by your heart that you want this, but you can't. There's a difference in that. We're talking about the people who are just totally straight out. They just don't want to have nothing to do with the Sunnah. That's different. The person who's working at McDonald's, you can't go work at McDonald's look like me. You cannot. You cannot. You get in trouble. Now, as we get to this part of the ending part of the Iman, okay, we still have other chapters of this. Now we're going to get into part about our Prophet, alayhi salatu wasalam. You must have complete belief, okay, in the Sirah Nabawiyah. This is the Sunnah of our Prophet, the story of our Prophet, his ways and means. It's a science. My brothers and sisters, You cannot say that you love our prophet, alayhi salatu wasalam, and you don't study this. I think they have some of this in English now. There's many books on the Sirah and the Nabawiyah. It's a lot, and it's kind of complicated, but they have a lot of books today that give you the beginning. You must study this, our brothers and sisters. If you don't, you are neglectful. Because how can you say you love our prophet when you don't understand his ways and means? You cannot. You can't say, well, look, I love him, and you all you talk about is the salat, or all you talk about is wudu. All you talk about is that you pray and you don't smoke and drink. That's not all of the ways of our prophet. That's only some. And here you have to study this, and you have to be taught this. If you can't learn it from a scholar or student of knowledge, then you pick up the book and take as much as you can out of it when you don't have the access to these people. But you have to have that in order to have Iman. Now, you say, yeah, okay, I hear you. So what about it? Now, okay, I go to the bookstore and I find the Sirah Nabawiyah. Okay, the story, the ways and means of our prophet. You find it. Now, what about it? Here is the second part of that condition of Iman. You must study it. You must learn it. And lastly, you must teach it. My brothers and sisters, these are some of the conditions of Iman. If you're not doing this, you have not done this, you are lacking in Iman. So today, as you hear your brother speak, you go to investigate what I say. If you want the book that I use a lot here, because I love this one Sheikh Islam, because he's broken down the Aqeedah beautifully, but unfortunately it's not in English. But he's broken down beautifully for us to understand. And again, the Iman is it encompassing many aspects, my brothers and sisters, not just one. As you see me talking today about it, I'm giving you something for us so all of us can measure our level, where we at in Iman. And now you can understand what I'm giving you today about Iman. Iman is not just only the words, it's the action. And it's the four coordination of the hands, the heart, the tongue, and the mind. And again, the Sirah Nabawiyah, you must learn this. Okay, you must, and you must have lessons in it. You must study it, and then you must learn it, and then you must teach it. If you don't do these things, my brothers and sisters, you lack Iman. You cannot do one thing here. You can't go pray, but yet and still you don't learn about our prophet, alayhi salatu wasalam. You don't study it, you don't learn it, and you don't teach it. You lack Iman. So I'm giving you the conditions we all must measure. Now, the truth be told, I study, but do I study it enough? No, I'm weak in it, meaning I don't spend a lot of time in it. I study it, but there's other things I do. And even I study, but I do try to give. And by meaning I do the other facets of it. But do I read a lot? No, especially of that. I've read before. I have a new book in here about and I love it. So far, what I read of it, and I'll get back on it, be ifnah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because even I should be reading more of it. I am telling you again, we must do what we can. And I understand our brothers and sisters in the United States and Europe, the rat race. How can you take time? You have to do your best, my brothers and sisters that's in the West. You must take time, even if it's 5 minutes a day, because you must take time to learn your deen. Yes, the rat race is a killer, but when's the last time many of you picked up the Quran? Many have not even picked it up in a year. Many hasn't even read not even one surah. This is a problem. You have to find balance. Remember, the Muslim is guided by mizan, by balance. By balance. You can't be so overloaded that you forget your deen. You have to find the balance. So now you see these conditions here. Now, we're closing near the end here. Now, the action of the heart, the possession of the heart and the Iman in it. This is something, again, that's very hard to judge, because, again, you do not know what's actually in my heart. You can kind of feel what's in my heart by knowing what you know of me and what you see of me and what you hear of me. But you cannot actually judge what's actually in the heart, but you do see the actions that I'm actually doing. So you can make some judgment, say, Yahya, I see he's strong in the faith because I'm exhibiting certain things. Okay, we're human. You must do these things because it's incumbent on each Muslim that he finds believers. You must find believers. You must find believers to be around, to strengthen your faith, my brothers and sisters. You must do this. Okay, you must do this. Now, we talked about the possession. We talked about the possession of the heart that has Iman in it. Now you say, yeah, okay, brother, I'm with you now. I get you. I understand. I'm starting to follow you. Now, what do I do? First, you must strengthen the heart. If you strengthen that heart, meaning the intention, the hands are going to follow, my brothers and sisters. They will follow. You go and you pray to Subhanahu wa Ta'ala to strengthen this heart, to strengthen it, to put the right intentions in it. The hands will follow. Now, what are we talking about the hands? I'll give you an example of this. When the heart is pure, when the heart is correct, you know what happened? You see the person that's sitting on the corner and you see he has nothing to eat and drink. When the heart is good, you will have this humility in you, and you go and use your hands. So you go buy him water, or you give him from your wealth. You give him $100, you give him $50. I'm not saying, if you have that, or even $5 or even $1, but you give what you can. Now there's the coordination beginning between the heart and the hands. This is what we're talking about, my brothers and sisters. And when you see brothers and sisters and you have the means, your table's full of food. You have chicken, you have rice, potatoes, you have abundance of food. And then one brother and his family is struggling. Your heart is right and the intention and the niyyah is correct when you go from your table, you and your wife, and you take some bread, some of that chicken, potatoes, and vegetables, and maybe even part of the cake to that brother and his wife so they can eat, even though they'll live a mile away because they're hungry. This is what we're talking about. This is the start of Iman. You have the Iman. It's starting to build in the heart. Now the heart and the hands are starting to coordinate. This is what we're talking about here. Now, also, we must condition the heart. We must have it prepared, meaning you have to make that dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, always asking him to strengthen you. If you don't do this, you cannot have a strong heart. You have to ask subhanahu wa ta'ala. You must beg him. You must make the conditions right for him to help you. If you don't pray, how can you ask subhanahu wa ta'ala to do it? If you don't make wudu correctly, how can you ask subhanahu wa ta'ala to strengthen you? You have to meet him. You have to do what he wants. You know what our prophet has said about the prayer. You must learn this. You must do this in order to get the bounty from subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you start doing this, these things will come. Bi-ithnillah, meaning permission of Allah. You always hear me say the permission of Allah. Now, this part also, this is the purification actually of the heart. Is the strengthening of your heart against Shaitan. Remember we talking about jihad? Remember we talked about this weeks ago? We talked about the 4 conditions of the jihad. Remember that? Has nothing to do with shooting the gun. No. But one of it is what? Cleaning the self and fighting who? The devil. That's the second condition. Remember that? And then the third is the hypocrite and the disbeliever. But one of the things, where do you think the kufr and the shirk, the disbelief and the sign of partners come from? It comes from what? The devil. Okay, so you have to strengthen that heart from this. Subhanahu wa ta'ala, he's there. You make dhikr, he's there. The devil runs away. Dhikr all the time, meaning the remembrance of Subhanahu wa ta'ala. The devil doesn't like this. He doesn't like this. He run away from you. When you do this, he runs for softer targets who are not doing it. The modern people, the modern Muslims who don't make dhikr law, or the ones who forget about Subhanahu wa ta'ala, they have a problem because now Subhanahu wa ta'ala has walked away from them. He waits for his ibadah, his ibadi, his worshiper to clean up. He's waiting for him. But sometimes things happen where the devil goes in and enters the picture. Here, this is kind of like what we're talking about here. We must strengthen our heart from disbelief and from what? Misguidance and shirk. We must do that in order to maintain our Iman, in order to have Iman. We must also strengthen ourselves against doubt. We're human beings. I don't care who you are. You're going to have some doubt in some things. But remember, we talked about that. Here we go with the heart again. What you may have doubt in something, and you ask Subhanahu wa ta'ala to strengthen you in it. You may have some doubt in something that you read in the Quran, but you don't speak it. You keep it here in the heart. You understand? And you still exhibit with your hands, and you still talk from your tongue. But maybe in the heart, you have some doubt of something about the Quran or about the Sunnah. It's normal. You're a human being. You ask Subhanahu wa ta'ala to clear it up for you. There's nothing wrong with that. Why? Because it's in your heart. Don't speak it. Don't use your hands to exhibit that you have doubt. The brother who I talk about, who has talked against the Makram rule, if he would have kept it in his heart, none of us could say anything. If he went with his hands and he still maintained behind it and still followed it, but he had doubt in it, that's one thing. But when he spoke it, he got himself in trouble. This is what I'm talking about. This is what we talk about here. We must keep our heart strong. And that heart be stronger by what? Making dhikr Allah continuously, my brothers and sisters. Constantly, as much as you can, making that dhikr. Making dhikr meaning remembrance of Allah. Allahu Akbar. Alhamdulillah. There's many things that you can say. If you go to the hadiths of the Prophet, you can find this. You can see this. And he teaches you. He gives you, even now we have these hadiths in English. He can teach you how to say these things to strengthen you. Now, also, we want Subhanahu wa ta'ala to strengthen us so that our heart will be sincere. You heard me say every time in my introduction, I always say Subhanahu wa ta'ala, okay, Allah yuhibbu mukhlisin. You hear me say mukhlisin in Arabic means the sincere. Subhanahu wa ta'ala loves this person. If you see in one particular surah, he uses this word a lot because he loves this person who is sincere. Subhanahu wa ta'ala knows the most sincere among us because he knows what's in the mind. He knows what's on our tongue. He knows what's in our heart, and he knows what our hands are doing. And he uses the term mukhlisin, the sincere person. So here we're asking to strengthen that. And lastly on that is strengthening our intention. Remember we talked about that, my brothers and sisters? We talked about the niyyah, the intention. That's important. You hear the adhan speak, okay? Now, we're human beings. I'm sleepy. This happens many times, especially this time of year where there's a small window between the last prayer of the night and the first prayer in the morning. I mean, it's difficult. When you get in the mid 60s and 70s, people know what I'm talking about. When you miss a lot of sleep, I'm not 20 years old anymore. You know, when you get this older man, and you only sleep 3.5 hours. It's difficult. You get older and you have all kind of thoughts pop in your head. But when I get up, I know I make the F-car. I get up, I have doubts. I say, I should go back to bed. Why I'm getting up to make the hajjud? Only had 3 hours of sleep, but I try I start making dhikr to drive shaitan, the devil, away, because he likes to come at you when you're sleeping. You know that. And when you first wake up, when you're weak and he try to put things into you. This is what we're talking about here. So strengthen your intention, my brothers and sisters. How do you do it? I cannot strengthen it for you. Subhanahu wa ta'ala can strengthen that by your prayer, by your ibadah, your worship. You must rely on Subhanahu wa ta'ala, my brothers and sisters. If you do this, he will strengthen you, inshallah ta'ala. He will strengthen you. And then once your intention, remember the heart, once it becomes pure, the hands will follow. You start giving the charity. You start doing things to help your brothers and sisters. Even your neighbor who's a Jew, you know he's hungry. You'll walk over to the house and you and your wife will give him something to eat. There's nothing wrong with that. This is the sincerity that Subhanahu wa ta'ala loves about the Muslim, the movement, who's have devout, Iman in his heart. He knows that. He see his neighbor, he's black man, but his neighbor's a Mexican and he's Catholic. But you know he's struggling because now the thing has happened, the virus happened. He lost his job. He may even speak Spanish. He may even hate you, but you walk to his house, you and your wife. You're Muslims. You're Muslims. If you see the people suffering, you are Muslim. You must take what you can and use your hands to your ability to help your fellow human being. Even if he's a Mexican and he speaks Spanish and he hates you because you're a black man. Even if that neighbor is a Japanese man and he hates you because you're black, but you are still Muslim. You take that food and you give it to him. Now, if he wants to get it and throw it in the trash, that's on him. That's on him. Subhanahu wa ta'ala will punish him because you should never take food that you can eat, and because there's people that need that. And wastefulness, Subhanahu wa ta'ala does love that. But as you're mukhlisin, you sincere. You see your neighbor. He's Mexican. He's Japanese. He's Chinese. He hates you because you're black. He wish you would move, but now he's in trouble. You forget that. You know he has nothing. You know he has kids over there. Maybe even your children are playing with his kids because you know how kids are. They don't have this type of malaise of hating. They play together. You go over and give that neighbor something to eat. There's nothing wrong with that. If he gets it and he says thank you and he gets it later and closes the door on you and he throws it, it's on him. I'm just trying to make a point, my brothers and sisters, how the seriousness of this and how you can build this Iman in your heart. And I think I'm going to conclude on this. We have another portion of this, and I was going to give you the next time, inshallah, I learn in a couple of days, if Subhanahu wa ta'ala grants me permission, I will get now into the difference between the heart of the movement and the heart of the hypocrite. There's some differences, my brothers and sisters. We measure ourselves on these conditions. We'll talk about this next time, inshallah, when Subhanahu wa ta'ala gives me permission. We'll talk about this part here because it's important. We must measure ourselves. Subhanahu wa ta'ala, he knows the difference, and we must understand the difference between the heart of the movement and the heart of the hypocrite. There's major difference. There's major differences. I will go over that. So in a nutshell, my brothers and sisters, you heard me speak today about the essence of Iman. We know Iman is not only talking. It's not just talking about you've been a Muslim 50 years. It's not just talking about you see a beard and you see a turban and you see he's got a turban, or you see them in long robes, all black clothing, and you see them acting in certain manners. This is not Iman. Iman are the conditions that I talked about here. Remember, in a nutshell, the Iman, you measure that Iman by what? The four things that you yourself have control. It's the hands, the heart, the tongue, and the mind. Those four must be in coordination. They must be in sync. If one of them is faulty, all three will be corrupted. If two of them are faulty and two are good, the other two are corrupted as well. You must have this condition. The four must be met. They must be cleaned. They must be purified. They must be in sync in order for you to have Iman. Because if not, you cannot have Iman. And let me say this, and we'll get very close here. And I'll talk to some of the people here in the chat. You'll hear the modern Muslim, they'll say, oh, Yahya is a fanatic. He's talking out of his head. Iman is only what you speak out. Well, let me tell you something, my brothers and sisters, about that. In Islam, we have some people that are deviants. Deviant, they're not Muslims. We have the people like the Morjia. The Morjia, this is advanced stuff. The Morjia they're Muslims. They say they're Muslims. But yet, let me tell you about the Morjia, and we have them to guard yourself. The Morjia is the person who believes that you have Iman here and here's debauchery. Okay, you have the two. He believes that your Iman is not affected if he goes to make adultery. Your man is not infected if you go steal. Your Iman, meaning again, your faith is not affected if you go and sell drugs. As long as you make your prayer, as long as you talk it, as long as you act like it, you can still do the other things. These are the people, the Morjia. You see what I'm talking about, my brothers and sisters. This is dangerous. These people are outside. They call them Morjia. Okay, they're outside. Morji is one person, and we have many Muslims that believe this today. They say, you can't say nothing to me, Yahya. I read the Quran every day. I go to every prayer inside the masjid. But he goes out with women, many different women, and he fornicates. And he'll come back and say, yes, man, you can't judge me. Yes, I do this, but I'm doing this over here too. My Iman is good. No, it's not. That's in violation of the Sharia. And Surah what? Al-Nur. But Surah Al-Mu'minun, the first 11 clarifies that. You're not a believer if you're doing this. And Subhanahu wa Ta'ala tells you. So I'm kind of giving you these things here. And in a nutshell, again, we talked about the actions of the heart. We talked about the hands and the mind. All this coordination have to be in sync. We said this, and I've said this over and over again. We must have this. We must do this. We must ask Subhanahu wa Ta'ala to strengthen us. We must ask Subhanahu wa Ta'ala to protect us. We must ask Subhanahu wa Ta'ala to strengthen our mind, our heart, our hand, and watch our tongue, because the tongue can lead you to the fire. We're human beings. We say things. We'll say things we shouldn't say. We get mad and we'll say things to our wives and to our husbands, but we're human beings. But we should come back to apologize. We should tell Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, please forgive me for my negative speech. These things happen because we're human beings. We must understand that. So, and remember, you as a Muslim, any human being, you can never judge what's in a person's heart and mind. That's Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. I don't care who you are. You may speculate what's in my heart. I may speculate what's in your heart, but I have no way of knowing. I don't know what's in your mind. I can speculate what I think is there, but I cannot. See, so we cannot judge those two things. We can only judge what's by our action in here. Okay, so remember that these conditions here. By the hand and the tongue, we can judge, because when he says, "Look, I'm a strong Muslim," but you see him coming out of a crack house. See what I mean? You see him going there 3 or 4 times a day. And he comes to you and he says, "Oh, hey, Amina, guess what? I'm a strong brother. You can't judge me. You don't know what's in my heart." Well, I saw your actions, my brother. I saw you in the crack house. What are you doing there? Okay, there's a contradiction there. And so I gave you these conditions today. And remember, and lastly here, one of the most purest forms of the Iman is the complete belief in Iman is what? The Shahadatain, meaning you swear to Subhanahu wa Ta'ala and that to our Prophet, and you give that declaration in the open. My brothers and sisters, hear me good on that. The Shahadatain, meaning you utter this not in secret, but you utter this aloud. And when you're making your prayer, but you make sure that that people know that you are a Muslim by this Shahadatain, and you do it often to reconfirm and reaffirm. When you do this, you strengthen the hand, you strengthen the heart, you strengthen the tongue, and you strengthen the mind. This is the bare essence of Iman. Remember that. And then lastly, the movement cannot have Iman unless he believes in the Sunnah Allah, his Sharia, meaning his Sharia, his law, and the law of the Prophet and his Sunnah. You must have those 4 conditions. You cannot have Iman. So I'm hoping I gave you some things to food of thought, my brothers and sisters, so you can judge yourself. I'm not judging nobody here. I cannot. I'm here sitting in my chair in Fez, Morocco, in beautiful Fez, Morocco. But I'm giving you this so you can judge ourselves. Okay, we look at this. We have an honest conversation with ourselves. How are we? I gave you things that you can measure. So you measure this. Measure your what your Islam is. Measure your Iman by what I gave you here, and you ask those questions. Thank you. Oh yes, Imperial Dynasty. Thank you, dear brother. Thank you, sister. Thank you very much for showing up. And Mina, dear sister, thank you for showing up. And I'm happy that and those in the future who may show up as well. I'm hoping that you got something out of this today, because Iman is something that every Muslim must have. If he doesn't have this, he's not a Muslim. And today I clear it up because there's so much confusion about Iman. People think it's only one facet. I've given you the facets today that now you measure that. We all measure how are we really believing? Do we actually have faith? I've given you some of those directions. And inshallah, I will start to clear up some other factors. But remember something, one last thing, my brothers and sisters, and I will close. You must have one facet to add to this, to that shahadatain. It's our prophet, alayhi salatu salam. You must acquire his ways and means and study it. It's incumbent upon you to have this in order for you to have the Iman. And you must, again, what, as I told you, study it, learn it, and teach it, okay? You must do those things in order for you to have the Iman. So the shahadatain, and then the seerah of our prophet, alayhi salatu wasalam. You must have this, okay? You must have this in order for you to have Iman. So my brothers and sisters, thank you for listening to me today and those in the future. And I'm hoping that you got something out of this. And I'll give, again, some more lessons on the fundamentals of the Iman and what we can do. And again, I will go into the next portion of this on explaining the difference of the heart between the person who's a believer and the person who is a hypocrite. You should know this because we must, again, measure ourselves to see, are we hypocrites? So I'll give you some of these points for you to look at to see actually if we are hypocrites or not, as far in the eyes of subhanahu wa ta'ala. Are we hypocrites by these conditions that I will lay out for you? And then you can see that and examine that. So my brothers and sisters, we have a beautiful religion, and that religion is clear cut. Subhanahu wa ta'ala says this in the Quran. I will follow this. I will not be deterred by any modern Muslim who gets on TV or YouTube and tries to declare something or come back and say, well, yeah, he's a fanatic, he's a terrorist and whatnot. I let them say what they want because I'm not that. I follow the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. I look at his ways and mean. If I'm following his ways, how can I be a terrorist? The Muslim who says this, how can I be a terrorist when I have not killed anybody or shoot anybody? And everybody knows how I feel about these groups out here today that call themselves mujahideen and what they're doing. I spoke against them and I talk against them continuously. And I talk against the hypocrites as well. So but I'm fair and equal. And I give what we can to even our brothers and sisters. And as I told you before, hey, I'm a brother from Compton, California. I was born and raised there. And I have friends, brothers and sisters there. I love them dearly, okay? I've been knowing them 60 some years I've been knowing them. So, I have love and in my heart for them. Again, I'm not a fanatic. I'm just going to give you that. But I'm stern against the hypocrites and the disbelievers. But I have mercy towards the believers. This is the condition of Iman, our brothers and sisters. So remember that. Thank you, my brothers and sisters who showed up today. I appreciate you. And may subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you and keep you safe, especially those in America, because it's a deadly place for you today. And I'm hoping subhanahu wa ta'ala grant you, and those who aspire to come to Africa, please come to Africa. Pick the right time to do it. Ask subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he'll give you the guidance, and he will bring you here to our beautiful continent here in Africa, because every place you go from Morocco down to South Africa, this place is loaded with beauty beyond belief, my brothers and sisters. Beauty on belief. When you come here on this African continent, there's no place on this earth like it. This is why Subhanahu wa ta'ala made it, and he put us first on this earth, and he put us on this continent, because this continent is something. Even Morocco, all the way down to South Africa, the beauty is exquisitely. It's something that is almost like a miracle. And so my brothers and sisters who sit in those concrete jungles there in the United States, and you want to come, ask Subhanahu wa ta'ala to bring you here. So I'll leave you in peace, and I'll give you the greetings that from Jinnah Subhanahu wa ta'ala, his words, Salamu alaikum, rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.